Meanwhile, a new opinion poll is suggesting that support for the war effort among Ukrainians has drastically declined in recent months. According to these latest numbers, 69% of Ukrainians now favour a negotiated end to the war as soon as possible, while only 24% support continuing the fight until victory. Now, this is a complete reversal from 3 years ago. The poll also suggests that feelings about Kyiv's most important ally have sharply deteriorated, with approval of US leadership dropping to just 16%. That's down from 66% back in 2022. Another notable finding relates to attitudes towards long-term Western integration, which have become more pessimistic. Now, according to the poll, only 32% of Ukrainians expect their country to join NATO within the next 10 years. That's down from 64% in 2022. And only 52% now think that Ukraine will become an EU member soon. That's compared to 73% just 3 years ago. Let's discuss these numbers with Kira Rudik. She's the leader of Ukraine's pro-European Holos party and a member of parliament in Kyiv. Welcome back to DW, Kira. Good to see you. How do you explain the growing pessimism among Ukrainians that these numbers seem to be revealing?
Hello, Anya, and thank you so much for having me. Of course, the war is exhausting. It is exhausting on all the people to sleep in the bomb shelter, not to know if we are going to wake up in the morning when we go to bed in the evening. It is very hard. The disappointment in the US leadership, President Trump, who promised to end the war in 1 day, then in a week, then in 100 days. And up to this time, we don't see any single step that was taken from the United States on actually pressuring Russia. Of course, all of this is creating disappointment among Ukrainians. However, I think these polls are not asking the most important question is, should we give up? And I'm sure that it is no. We made this choice in 2022, and I didn't see or hear this among the Ukrainians, and I think this resolve is still here.
So what would you say, Kira, to Ukrainians who are asking why keep fighting if peace seems unlikely right now, and as you mentioned, US support, international support appears to be weakening? What would you say to them?
That we do not have any alternative presented to us. Russia didn't come in and say, oh, okay, these are the terms of any peace deal, because again, they do not want peace. American president, it was not coming saying, this is the peace deal and this is how it's going to be assured. We are actually not presented with any other choice than to give up if we stop fighting, and then to make our cities be the same as Bucha and Irpin. We all know what is happening to cities that are occupied by Russians. And of course, this is not the alternative that people are looking at.
Do you think that these figures that we're talking about here, do you think this reflects, as you mentioned, more of a crisis of confidence in Ukraine's allies rather than a crisis of confidence in the government in Kyiv?
I think you're right. It's more about the external help and external resolve. Because right now, the majority of Ukrainian families have either someone fighting at the front line or they have lost somebody during the war. And this is why we already have paid an enormous price to stop right now and say, okay, we give up. So it's more on the hopes that we had when President Trump was making his promises, when our allies were coming to Kyiv saying we will put an enormous pressure on Putin for a ceasefire, and nothing of that actually came to life. So the ceasefire never happened, no matter that everybody who said that they support us were pressuring for that to happen.
Kira, it's very clear that you're saying Ukrainians cannot give up, and yet with this suggestion that Ukrainians are now favouring a negotiated end to the war as soon as possible, how much pressure do you think this is putting on President Zelensky to potentially accept a peace deal?
again, the peace deal is not on the table. And we should be talking about it like when it will arrive, if it will arrive. Because again, we haven't seen any single fact supporting that Russia wants to end the war. They want to continue fighting. We want to survive, and this makes it very hard to find a middle ground. But what is most important is the security guarantees. We have already been in war with Russia since 2014. We have had dozens, maybe hundreds of the ceasefire agreements with them, and they were not honored. So how this time will be different? So there are more questions than answers here, and I do not see that the peace is somewhere near.
So what are your expectations then of a possible meeting next week between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
My hopes are that finally Trump will realize that President Putin is not his friend and is not his ally, and somebody who is just making him look publicly really, really bad. And then he will start actually putting the pressure on Russia. As of right now, President Trump didn't use the majority of the tools that he has in his capacity, starting from the sanctions and tariffs, the bill that is currently in Congress, up to, again, dropping the prices on oil and working with Russia's allies, India, China, potentially Iran, North Korea, to pressure them so that Russia will be isolated and its economy will receive a hit that they cannot continue the war with.
How and when, Kira, do you see this war ending?
I don't see it right now, like in plain sight. We understand that there are no simple solutions to the complicated problems. However, again, as of right now, there is no peace deal or any solution that has been presented to Ukraine. Only solution that everybody talking about without actually talking about it, it's a capitulation, and this is not what we can agree to.
Ukrainian lawmaker Kira Rudik, thank you so much for joining us here on DW, Kira. We appreciate it.
Thank you.